The rain hammered against the cracked windows of the small apartment as 8-year-old Maya pressed her face against the glass. Her breath fogged the surface as she watched the empty street below, hoping to see her mother's familiar figure walking home from work. But the street remained empty, just like it had been for the past 3 days. Maya's stomach growled loudly, reminding her that the last proper meal she had eaten was the sandwich her mother, Sarah, had made for her before leaving for work on Monday morning. Sarah worked 2 jobs to keep their tiny apartment and put food on the table. She cleaned offices early in the morning and worked at a local diner in the evenings. Maya was used to spending time alone, but never this long. The little girl walked to the kitchen and opened the refrigerator. Only a carton of spoiled milk and some leftover rice sat inside. She had eaten the rice yesterday, picking at it with her small fingers. The bread had run out 2 days ago, and the few cookies in the cupboard were gone by Tuesday night. Maya tried calling her mother's phone, but it went straight to voicemail every time. She didn't know the numbers for her mother's jobs, and Sarah had always told her never to bother the neighbors, unless it was a real emergency. But Maya wasn't sure what counted as a real emergency. Her mother had been late before, sometimes not coming home until very late at night, but she had never been gone this long without calling. The 8-year-old sat on the old couch and hugged her stuffed rabbit tightly. She had named it Coco because of its brown color, and it was the only thing that made her feel less scared. Maya's father had left when she was just a baby, so it had always been just her and her mother against the world. Sarah would often tell Maya stories about brave princesses who saved the day, and Maya always imagined herself as one of those princesses. As the hours passed, Maya's worry grew stronger. She walked around the small apartment, touching her mother's things and hoping they would somehow bring Sarah back. She picked up her mother's favorite coffee mug, the one with the chip on the handle that Sarah refused to throw away because Maya had given it to her for Mother's Day 2 years ago. Night fell, and Maya realized she would have to spend another night alone. She had been sleeping in her mother's bed because it made her feel closer to Sarah. The apartment felt too big and too quiet without her mother's presence. Every small sound made Maya jump, thinking it might be Sarah coming home, but it was always just the building settling or neighbors moving around upstairs. Maya tried to be brave like the princesses in her mother's stories, but the fear was getting stronger. She had heard some of the older kids in her building talking about bad things that happened to people who disappeared. Maya tried not to think about those things, but the thoughts crept into her mind anyway. The next morning, Maya woke up hungry and more worried than ever. She looked out the window again, scanning every person who walked by, hoping one of them would be her mother. A group of motorcycles roared past the building, their loud engines echoing off the walls.
Maya watched them disappear around the corner, wishing she could ask every person she saw if they had seen her mother. Maya made a decision that morning.
She couldn't just sit in the apartment anymore waiting and hoping. She needed to find her mother herself. Maya had heard her mother talk about the dangerous parts of the city, places where bad people hung out and did bad things. Maybe her mother was trapped somewhere and needed help. Maybe she was hurt and couldn't come home. The little girl went to her mother's closet and pulled out an old shoebox from the top shelf. Inside, wrapped in a cloth, was something Sarah had shown her once and told her never to touch. It was a small gun that had belonged to Maya's grandfather. Sarah had kept it for protection but had never used it. Maya's hands shook as she picked it up, remembering her mother's serious voice when she had explained that guns were very dangerous and should never be played with. But Maya wasn't playing. She was going to find her mother, and if bad people had taken Sarah, Maya would make them give her back. The 8-year-old girl wrapped the gun in the cloth and put it in her small backpack, along with Coco and the last of her mother's emergency money that she found in a coffee can under the kitchen sink. Maya stepped out of the apartment building for the first time in 4 days. The sun felt warm on her face, but she was too focused on her mission to enjoy it. She had put on her best dress, the blue one with small flowers that her mother had bought her for school pictures. Maya thought that if she looked nice, people would be more likely to help her find Sarah. The 8-year-old walked down the familiar streets of her neighborhood, looking carefully at every person she passed. She stopped at the corner store where her mother sometimes bought groceries and approached the elderly man behind the counter. Her voice was small but determined as she asked if he had seen her mother. The man looked concerned when Maya described Sarah, but he shook his head sadly. He hadn't seen her in several days. Maya continued walking, moving beyond her familiar neighborhood into areas she had only seen from the bus window when traveling with her mother. The buildings got older and more run down as she walked. Broken windows were covered with boards and trash littered the streets. Maya clutched her backpack tighter, feeling the weight of the gun inside. She approached a woman sitting on some steps and asked about her mother. The woman looked at Maya with surprise and concern. A little girl walking alone in this part of the city was unusual and dangerous. The woman asked Maya where her family was. But Maya just repeated her question about Sarah. When the woman said she hadn't seen her mother, Maya thanked her politely and continued walking. As the day wore on, Maya asked dozens of people about her mother. She showed them the only photo she had, a picture from her backpack of her and Sarah at the park last summer. Most people were kind and concerned about seeing such a young child alone, but none of them had seen Sarah. Some people tried to convince Maya to go home or asked if they could call someone for her, but Maya was determined to keep searching. The sun was getting lower in the sky when Maya heard the loud roar of motorcycle engines. She looked up to see a group of 5 motorcycles coming down the street. The riders wore leather jackets and looked tough and mean. Maya had heard her mother talk about motorcycle gangs and how they sometimes cause trouble in the city. Her young mind made a connection. What if these bad men knew something about her mother? Maya's heart pounded as she stepped into the middle of the street, right in the path of the motorcycles. The lead rider had to brake hard to avoid hitting her, and the whole group came to a stop. The riders were angry and shouting, asking what was wrong with her for jumping in front of them like that. But Maya was not afraid anymore. All her worry and fear over the past 4 days had turned into determination. She reached into her backpack and pulled out the cloth-wrapped gun. Her small hands shook as she unwrapped it and pointed it at the motorcyclists. The riders immediately became very quiet and serious when they saw the weapon in the child's hands. Maya's voice was loud and clear as she demanded to know where her mother was. She told them that bad people had taken Sarah and that she wanted her mother back right now. The motorcyclists looked at each other with confusion and concern. They could see that this was just a scared little girl, but the gun in her hands made the situation very dangerous. The leader of the group, a tall man with graying hair and tattoos on his arms, slowly raised his hands and spoke to Maya in a calm voice. He told her that they didn't know anything about her mother, and he asked her to put the gun down so they could help her look for Sarah. But Maya didn't believe him. She had heard too many stories about bad men who lied and hurt people. Maya kept the gun pointed at them and repeated her demand. She wanted to know where her mother was, and she wasn't going to put the gun down until they told her. Tears started running down her face, but her hands remained steady. She had been brave for 4 days, taking care of herself and not giving up hope. Now she was going to save her mother, just like the princesses in Sarah's stories. The motorcyclists realized they were dealing with a desperate child who had probably been alone for days. They could see the hunger in her thin face and the exhaustion in her eyes. The leader continued talking to Maya in a gentle voice, explaining that they were not the bad men she was looking for. He told her that there were good people who could help her find her mother, people whose job it was to help children and families. But Maya had been disappointed too many times already. She had asked so many people about her mother, and no one had been able to help. The gun felt heavy in her small hands, but she kept it pointed at the men. This was her last chance to find Sarah, and she wasn't going to give up now. People on the street began to notice the unusual scene. Some stopped and stared from a safe distance, while others quickly walked away, not wanting to get involved. A few people pulled out their phones, and Maya could hear someone calling the police. The little girl's heart raced faster, but she kept the gun steady in her trembling hands. The leader of the motorcycle group, whose name was Jake, had been riding with his friends for over 20 years. He had seen many dangerous situations, but nothing like this. Looking at Maya, he didn't see a threat. He saw a terrified child who had reached the end of her rope. Jake had a daughter about Maya's age, and the thought of his own child being alone and scared made his chest tight with emotion. Jake slowly removed his helmet and set it on the ground. His friends followed his lead, showing Maya that they were not trying to hide or run away. Jake's voice was soft and patient as he spoke to the little girl. He told her that his name was Jake, and that he was a father too. He explained that he understood how scared she must be and how much she missed her mother. Maya listened to Jake's words, but she didn't lower the gun. She had been disappointed by too many adults already. Her mother had always told her to be careful around strangers, especially men on motorcycles. But something in Jake's voice was different from the other people she had talked to that day. He didn't sound like he was just trying to get rid of her. Jake asked Maya what her mother's name was and what she looked like. When Maya described Sarah, Jake nodded thoughtfully. He told Maya that he and his friends rode all over the city and knew many people. He promised that if she put the gun down, they would help her look for Sarah. They would use their motorcycles to search much faster than Maya could walk. But Maya was tired of promises. Adults had been making promises to her all her life, and many of them had been broken. Her father had promised to come back and visit, but he never did. Teachers had promised that things would get better, but Maya and her mother still struggled every day. Now her mother had been gone for 4 days, and nobody seemed to be able to help. Jake could see the doubt and pain in Maya's eyes. He made a decision that surprised even his friends. He slowly reached into his jacket pocket and pulled out his wallet. From it, he took a picture of his own daughter, Emma, and held it up for Maya to see. He told Maya that Emma was 8 years old, just like her, and that if Emma was missing, he would want someone to help her too. The sight of the little girl in the photograph made Maya pause. She looked like Maya in some ways, with the same serious expression that Maya often had. Jake continued talking, explaining that he was part of a group that helped people in the community. They weren't the bad men that Maya was thinking of. They actually spent their time protecting people and helping families in trouble. Maya's arms were getting tired from holding the gun, but she was afraid to put it down. What if these men were lying to her? What if they drove away and left her alone again? Jake seemed to understand her fears. He told Maya that she could keep the gun if it made her feel safer, but he asked her to point it away from them while they talked. Slowly, Maya lowered the gun so it was pointing at the ground instead of at the men. Jake smiled and thanked her. He asked Maya when she had last eaten, and when she admitted it had been yesterday, Jake's expression became even more concerned. He reached into his jacket again and pulled out a granola bar, tossing it gently toward Maya. Maya picked up the granola bar and unwrapped it quickly. She was so hungry that she ate it in just a few bites. The food gave her a little bit of energy, but it also made her realize just how weak and tired she had become. Jake watched her eat and asked more questions about her mother. He wanted to know where Sarah worked and what she had been doing before she disappeared. As Maya answered Jake's questions, she began to feel a tiny bit of hope for the first time in days. Jake seemed to really listen to her answers, and he asked follow-up questions that showed he was taking her seriously. He wasn't just trying to get her to go away like some of the other adults had done. Jake turned to his friends and spoke to them quietly. Maya couldn't hear what they were saying, but she could see them nodding and looking at her with concerned expressions. After a few minutes, Jake turned back to Maya and told her that they had a plan. They were going to split up and search different parts of the city for her mother. They knew people who worked at many of the places where Sarah might have gone. Maya felt a mixture of hope and fear. She wanted to believe that these men could help her find her mother, but she was still scared to trust them completely. The gun felt heavy in her small hands, and she realized that she didn't really know how to use it properly. She had only seen guns in movies and on television shows. Jake could hear sirens in the distance getting closer. He knew the police would arrive soon, and he was worried about what might happen when they saw a young child with a gun. Police officers were trained to handle dangerous situations, but Maya was just a scared little girl who might make a sudden movement that could be misunderstood. Jake spoke to Maya urgently but gently. He explained that the police were coming and that they would want to help her find her mother too. But he warned Maya that police officers might be scared if they saw her holding the gun, and they might not understand that she was just looking for Sarah. Jake asked Maya if she would trust him enough to let him hold the gun safely while they waited for the police. Maya looked at Jake's kind face and thought about his daughter Emma. She thought about how tired her arms were and how scared she was becoming as the sirens got louder. Slowly, carefully, Maya handed the gun to Jake. He took it gently and immediately made sure it was pointed safely toward the ground. Then he wrapped it back in the cloth and set it down away from everyone. When the police cars arrived, Jake immediately called out to the officers, explaining that they had a missing child situation and that the gun was secure. The police officers approached carefully, but Jake's calm voice and clear explanation helped them understand that the immediate danger had passed. Officer Martinez was the first to reach Maya. She was a mother herself and had experience working with children in crisis situations. She knelt down to Maya's level and spoke to her in a warm, reassuring voice. Maya was frightened by all the attention and the flashing lights of the police cars, but Officer Martinez's gentle manner helped her feel a little safer. Maya told Officer Martinez the same story she had told Jake about her missing mother. Officer Martinez listened carefully and asked detailed questions about when Maya had last seen Sarah, what her mother had been wearing, and where she worked. The officer wrote everything down in a small notebook and promised Maya that the police would do everything possible to find Sarah. Jake and his friends stayed nearby while Officer Martinez talked to Maya. They had called off their planned search since the police were now involved, but Jake wanted to make sure Maya was okay. He could see that the little girl was exhausted and overwhelmed by everything that was happening. Officer Martinez contacted the police station and gave them all the information about Sarah. Within minutes, other officers were dispatched to check Sarah's workplace and the hospitals in the area. Maya sat in the back of the police car with the door open, eating a sandwich that one of the officers had brought her from a nearby store. As Maya ate, Officer Martinez explained what would happen next. The police would search for Sarah, but Maya couldn't stay alone in her apartment anymore. Social services would need to be contacted to make sure Maya had a safe place to stay. While they looked for her mother, Maya became upset when she heard this, insisting that she needed to stay in her apartment so her mother could find her when she came home. Jake approached the police car and asked if he could speak to Maya for a moment. Officer Martinez nodded and Jake knelt down beside the car. He explained to Maya that the police were much better at finding missing people than he and his friends were. They had special equipment and training that would help them search for Sarah more effectively than Maya could by walking around the city alone. Jake also told Maya that her mother would want her to be safe and well-fed while the police searched. Sarah wouldn't want Maya to be alone and scared in an empty apartment. The best thing Maya could do to help her mother would be to stay safe and healthy, so that when Sarah was found, Maya would be okay too. Maya thought about Jake's words. She was so tired, and the sandwich was the best food she had eaten in days. Maybe Jake was right. Maybe the police really could find her mother better than she could. But Maya was still scared about leaving her apartment. What if her mother came home and Maya wasn't there? Officer Martinez had an idea. She told Maya that the police would check Maya's apartment several times each day while they searched for Sarah. If Sarah came home, the police would know immediately and would bring Maya to her right away. Maya would also be able to call the apartment from wherever she was staying, just in case her mother came home and tried to call. As they talked, Jake's phone rang. He answered it and spoke quietly for a few minutes. When he hung up, he had important news. One of his friends had contacted a security guard at the hospital downtown. The security guard remembered seeing a woman who matched Sarah's description being brought to the emergency room 3 days ago. She had been unconscious, and since she had no identification with her, the hospital hadn't been able to contact her family. Officer Martinez immediately radioed this information to the police station. Within minutes, she received confirmation that a woman matching Sarah's description was indeed at the downtown hospital. She had been in a coma since Monday night after being hit by a car while crossing the street on her way home from work. The hospital had been trying to identify her for 3 days. Maya's eyes filled with tears when she heard this news, but for the first time in days, they were tears of relief rather than fear. Her mother was alive. Sarah was hurt, but she was alive and in a place where doctors could help her get better. Maya had been right to worry, and she had been right to search for her mother, even though she had gone about it in a dangerous way. Officer Martinez quickly arranged for Maya to be taken to the hospital to see her mother. Jake asked if he could go with them, explaining that he wanted to make sure Maya was reunited safely with Sarah. Officer Martinez agreed, recognizing that Jake had played an important role in helping to solve the mystery of Sarah's disappearance. The ride to the hospital felt like the longest journey of Maya's life, even though it only took 15 minutes. She sat in the back seat of Officer Martinez's patrol car, clutching her stuffed rabbit Coco and staring out the window. Jake followed behind them on his motorcycle, keeping a protective eye on the police car as they made their way through the city traffic. When they arrived at the hospital, Maya's legs felt shaky as she stepped out of the car. The hospital was much bigger than she had expected, with tall white walls and lots of windows. People in scrubs and white coats walked quickly in and out of the building, and Maya wondered if any of them had been taking care of her mother. Officer Martinez held Maya's hand as they walked through the automatic doors into the hospital lobby. The smell of disinfectant and the sound of beeping machines filled the air. Maya had never been inside a hospital before, and everything seemed strange and a little scary. Jake walked beside them, his leather jacket looking out of place among all the medical staff. At the information desk, Officer Martinez spoke to a nurse who checked her computer and then made a phone call. After a few minutes, a doctor in a white coat came down to meet them. Dr. Peterson was a kind-looking woman with gray hair and gentle eyes. She knelt down to Maya's level and explained that her mother had been badly hurt, but that the doctors had been taking very good care of her. Dr. Peterson told Maya that Sarah had been hit by a car while crossing the street. She had suffered a serious head injury and had been unconscious for 3 days. However, her condition had been slowly improving, and the doctors were hopeful that she would wake up soon. Maya's eyes filled with tears again, but she tried to be brave as Dr. Peterson led them to the elevator. On the 4th floor, they walked down a long hallway lined with rooms. Maya could see other patients through some of the open doors, and she felt scared about what her mother might look like. Dr. Peterson stopped outside room 412 and gently prepared Maya for what she was about to see. Sarah would have bandages on her head and tubes connected to machines that were helping her breathe and monitoring her heart. When Maya first saw her mother lying in the hospital bed, she almost didn't recognize her. Sarah's face was pale and bruised, and her head was wrapped in white bandages. Tubes and wires connected her to several machines that beeped and hummed quietly. Maya stood frozen in the doorway, afraid to go closer. Jake placed a gentle hand on Maya's shoulder and reminded her that this was still her mother, the same person who told her bedtime stories and made her favorite sandwiches. Sarah was just sleeping and getting better, Jake explained. Maya took a deep breath and slowly walked to her mother's bedside. Maya carefully reached out and touched her mother's hand. Sarah's skin felt warm, and Maya could see her chest rising and falling as she breathed. Maya began to talk to her mother, telling her about everything that had happened over the past 4 days. She told Sarah about being scared and hungry, about searching the city, and about meeting Jake and the police officers who had helped her. As Maya talked, something amazing happened. Sarah's fingers moved slightly, squeezing Maya's hand very gently. Dr. Peterson came closer to the bed and checked Sarah's vital signs on the monitors. She told Maya excitedly that her mother was showing signs of waking up. Sometimes, Dr. Peterson explained, the sound of a loved one's voice could help bring a person out of a coma. Maya continued talking to her mother, telling her about Coco the rabbit and how much she had missed their bedtime stories. She promised Sarah that she had been brave, just like the princesses in the stories, even though she had also been very scared. Maya told her mother that she loved her and needed her to wake up so they could go home together. After about 20 minutes, Sarah's eyelids began to flutter. Maya held her breath as her mother's eyes slowly opened. Sarah looked confused at first, blinking in the bright hospital lights and trying to focus on the faces around her. When her eyes finally found Maya, Sarah's face filled with relief and love. Sarah's voice was weak and hoarse, but she managed to whisper Maya's name. Maya burst into tears and carefully hugged her mother, being mindful of all the tubes and wires. Sarah tried to sit up but was too weak, so she just held Maya's hand tightly and stroked her daughter's hair with her free hand. Dr. Peterson checked Sarah's responses and explained that while her mother was awake, she would need to stay in the hospital for several more days to make sure her brain injury healed properly. Sarah was confused about how much time had passed and was shocked to learn that she had been unconscious for 3 days. When she heard about Maya being alone in the apartment, Sarah's eyes filled with tears of guilt and worry. Maya assured her mother that she was okay and that she had been brave. She introduced Sarah to Jake, explaining how he and his friends had helped her when she was looking for her mother. Sarah was grateful to Jake for taking care of Maya, but she was also concerned when she learned about the gun and Maya's dangerous search through the city. Jake spoke privately with Sarah for a few minutes, explaining how determined and resourceful Maya had been. He told Sarah that Maya's love for her had driven her to do extraordinary things, even though some of them had been dangerous. Jake promised Sarah that he would check on Maya and her regularly to make sure they had the support they needed. Officer Martinez also spoke with Sarah about the situation. She explained that social services would need to be involved to make sure Maya had proper care while Sarah recovered. However, since Sarah was now awake and improving, the focus would be on supporting the family rather than separating them. 2 weeks later, Sarah was finally strong enough to come home from the hospital. Maya had stayed with a kind foster family during her mother's recovery, but she had visited the hospital every day after school. Jake had kept his promise and checked on Maya regularly, sometimes bringing his daughter Emma along so the two girls could become friends. On the day Sarah was discharged, Jake and his motorcycle friends created a special escort for their ride home. They rode slowly alongside the taxi that carried Sarah and Maya, making sure they arrived safely at their apartment building. Maya was excited to show her mother how well she had taken care of their home during the brief time she had been allowed to visit and clean up. The apartment looked different now. Social services had helped arrange for food assistance and had connected Sarah with community resources she hadn't known existed. Jake and his friends had also quietly helped by fixing some of the broken things in the apartment and making sure the refrigerator was stocked with groceries for Sarah's homecoming. Sarah was still recovering from her head injury and had to move slowly and rest frequently. Maya had become very protective of her mother, constantly checking to make sure Sarah was comfortable and had everything she needed. The experience of almost losing her mother had made Maya appreciate every moment they had together. Dr. Peterson had explained to both Sarah and Maya that recovery from a serious brain injury takes time. Sarah would need to attend physical therapy sessions and regular checkups for several months. She wouldn't be able to return to her demanding two-job schedule right away, which worried her because of their financial situation. Jake had anticipated this problem and had spoken with his friends about ways they could help. His motorcycle group, which Maya learned was actually a community service organization, had connections with local businesses and charities. They helped arrange for Sarah to get a single, less physically demanding job that would provide enough income to support their family while she recovered. Maya returned to school, but her experience had changed her in important ways. She was more confident and spoke up more in class. Her teacher noticed that Maya seemed more mature and was better at solving problems on her own. Maya also started a friendship with Emma, Jake's daughter, and the two girls often played together when their families got together. The gun that had started the whole dramatic confrontation was properly secured and eventually returned to authorities. Officer Martinez had used the incident as a teaching moment, explaining to Maya about gun safety and better ways to get help when she was in trouble. Maya promised that if she ever felt scared or lost again, she would call the police or ask a trusted adult for help instead of trying to handle things herself. Sarah felt guilty about the dangerous situation Maya had faced while she was unconscious in the hospital. She blamed herself for not having emergency contacts or backup plans in place. Sarah made sure Maya memorized important phone numbers and knew exactly what to do if something similar ever happened again. Jake continued to be a friend to both Maya and Sarah. He had been deeply moved by Maya's determination to find her mother and her willingness to face danger for the people she loved. Jake started volunteering with programs that helped single mothers and their children. Inspired by Sarah and Maya's story, the local news eventually heard about Maya's dramatic search for her mother and wanted to do a story about it. However, Sarah and Maya decided they preferred to keep their privacy and focus on healing as a family. They did allow Jake's community service group to share their story in a way that helped raise awareness about the needs of single-parent families in their city. Maya learned that being brave didn't always mean doing dangerous things like she had done with the gun. Real bravery could also mean asking for help when you needed it, trusting people who wanted to help you, and taking care of the people you loved in safe and smart ways. Sarah made changes to ensure Maya would never face such a situation alone again. She arranged for emergency contacts with neighbors, gave Maya a cell phone with important numbers programmed in, and made sure Maya knew how to reach her at work. Sarah also joined a support group for single mothers, where she made friends who could help each other in times of crisis. 6 months after the incident, Maya and Sarah attended a community event organized by Jake's group. Maya was asked to speak about her experience, and she told the audience that love could make you brave enough to do anything, but that it was important to ask for help from good people when you were in trouble. Maya's story became an inspiration to other children in similar situations. The community rally led to the creation of a support network for families where single parents worked multiple jobs. This network ensured that children would have trusted adults to call if their parents didn't come home as expected. As Maya grew older, she never forgot the lessons she learned during those 4 frightening days when her mother was missing. She became someone who helped other children in her school when they faced problems, and she always remembered to tell trusted adults when someone needed help. Maya's courage in facing the unknown had not only saved her relationship with her mother, but had also helped improve life for other families in their community. Sarah recovered completely from her injuries, and while the memory of that difficult time never fully faded, it strengthened the bond between mother and daughter. They had learned that they could face anything together, as long as they had love, courage, and the wisdom to accept help from good people when they needed it most.